Tachibana Junichi and Ayatsuji Tsukasa are second-year high school students and they're dating. One day, Junichi is taken aback by the scene unfolding around him with Tsukasa. They're taking a bath together. Tsukasa, who is scrubbing Junichi's back, asks if he's enjoying it. Junichi, a bit nervous, replies that it feels very nice. He can hardly believe this happy moment is happening to him. Every now and then he glances over at Tsukasa, who's wearing just a towel. Tsukasa compliments Junichi's broad back, making him blush a little. She even says she has to stretch out her arms to scrub his back fully, then suddenly slips on some soap bubbles, causing her towel to slip off. Junichi almost turns to check on her, but Tsukasa, now trying to cover her chest, warns that she won't forgive him if he turns around. Junichi follows her instructions, though he's in front of a mirror that perfectly reflects Tsukasa's image. He looks at the reflection from her feet upward, and as he reaches her face, it suddenly morphs into his little sister, Mia. Maya's voice snaps him out of his dream with Tsukasa. Junichi opens his eyes to find Mia on top of him, telling him he'll be late for school if he doesn't get up soon, and that if he gets scolded by the teacher, it won't be her fault. Annoyed, Junichi wonders why Mia had to wake him up. Not understanding what he means, Mia yells that she won't wake him up ever again, so he can sleep for the rest of his life if he wants. On his way to school, Junichi's still a bit irritated with Mia. He was so close to seeing Tsukasa's body. Suddenly, Tsukasa appears behind him and asks if he was saying her name. She greets Junichi, and he awkwardly greets her back. As he looks at her, he recalls her body wrapped in a towel, just as it was in his dream. Tsukasa, noticing his expression, puts on an annoyed face, startling Junichi. She accuses him of looking perverted, which he denies. Then, Yayoi calls out to Tsukasa, who turns to greet her friends and joins them for a chat. Junichi and Tsukasa started dating about a month ago, since the school's anniversary celebration last Christmas. He still finds it hard to believe that someone as beautiful and smart as Tsukasa is his girlfriend. After chatting with her friends, Tsukasa's friends leave. Junichi gazes at Tsukasa and she asks what's up. Junichi says it's nothing. He's just grateful to be dating her. Tsukasa asks if he did the practice problems she gave him yesterday. He admits he was too sleepy to get to them. Tsukasa encourages him to stay determined, reminding him that finals are coming up, and then there will be college entrance exams next year. Apologizing, Junichi feels that Tsukasa is always a bit overbearing with him. This morning, the homeroom teacher of Class 2 reminds the students that their finals are approaching and also announces an important upcoming school event, the election for Student Council President. The teacher says Tsukasa will be nominated for the president position, and while he won't tell the students to vote for her just because they're classmates, he encourages them to support her. Everyone claps and Tsukasa shares that based on her experience as class president and on the anniversary celebration committee, she wants the student council to inspire everyone. She asks her classmates for their support. Her friends cheer her on, confident she'll be elected as student council president. Voting will take place next week with the candidate list posted on the school bulletin board at noon. After that, the campaign season begins. The homeroom teacher reminds the students to pay attention to the candidates and consider the choice carefully before voting. This afternoon, all the students gathered on the field, eagerly waiting for the list of student council president candidates to be posted on the bulletin board. A second-year student from Class 2 mentioned to Junichi that he must be curious about the other candidates besides Tsukasa, and indeed, Junichi was a bit intrigued. One of the popular third-year students, Haruka Morishima, joked that she should have run herself, but her friend reminded her that she'd be graduating soon. Sanakata, a first-year student and Mia's friend, said she wanted to go home right away, but Mia insisted that things were just getting started. Finally, the candidate announcement was posted on the board listing 4 contenders: Seiji Hanazono, Tsukasa Ayatsuji, Sanakata, and Noriko Kurosawa. When Junichi saw Noriko's name on the list, he glanced her way, but she quickly looked away, pretending not to notice him. Seiji's friends cheered him on, and several students were surprised to see a first-year candidate. They acknowledged Sei's boldness for stepping up. Sai overheard people talking about her, which made her feel shy, but Mia, as her close friend, kept encouraging her. Ai also chimed in, saying this was a great opportunity for Sei to overcome her shyness. Maya and Ai assured Sei that they'd support her, so Sei started to feel calmer and more confident. Meanwhile, the list of candidates for vice president was also posted on the bulletin board. At this school, the elected president has the authority to appoint their own vice president, which can influence how people vote. Junichi asked Tsukasa who she'd choose as her vice president if she won, but Tsukasa just smiled and said it was a secret. When Junichi saw the vice president candidates, he was surprised. Tsukasa had put him on her list as her choice for vice president. Shocked, he asked Tsukasa why she picked him as her candidate for vice president. Tsukasa explained that Junichi had been a great help when they worked together on the school anniversary celebration committee, so she felt he understood how she operated, which is why she chose him. Tsukasa then asked if it was a problem for him, leaving Junichi momentarily speechless. Then Kaoru Tanamachi approached Junichi, asking if he'd seen the vice president list. Confused, Junichi checked again, only to find that Noriko had also chosen him as her vice president candidate. This meant that both Tsukasa and Noriko had selected Junichi as their choice. Stei had chosen Miya as her vice president and Seiji had chosen Romi. Junichi was even more shocked by this discovery. He saw Noriko's friends cheering her on, and Noriko smiled as she asked them for their support. Kaoru commented to Junichi on Noriko's boldness, saying it was as if she'd made a public confession. Tsukasa seemed annoyed by the whole situation. Later, behind the school, Tsukasa questioned Junichi about what this was all about. Junichi admitted he had no clue and insisted that he'd never even spoken to Noriko before. Tsukasa kept staring at him intently, so he assured her he was telling the truth. Tsukasa believed him, thinking that Junichi likely didn't know Noriko personally. She then mentioned that all she had to do was win this election. Junichi, still a bit dazed, reflected on Kaoru's comment about Noriko's choice to select him as her vice president being like a public confession. Just then, Tsukasa tapped him on the head with a piece of paper, reminding him of his commitment to study with her every day so they could get into the same university. Apologizing, Junichi realized she was right. Tsukasa figured that Junichi was probably thinking that Noriko's choice was a confession of sorts, but Junichi denied it. Tsukasa's intense stare, however, made it hard for him to lie. Junichi asked Tsukasa why Noriko would even pick him as her vice president, especially since he'd only just learned her name today. Tsukasa confidently suggested that Noriko might just be trying to get under her skin, possibly because her father was a city council member with a lot of pride and Noriko likely had her sights set on Tsukasa. By choosing Junichi, Noriko may just be trying to irritate her and lower her morale. Finally, Junichi understood the situation. Tsukasa teased him, asking if he was disappointed that it wasn't a love confession. Embarrassed, Junichi said that couldn't possibly be the case. He then asked if he should decline Noriko's offer for the vice president role. Tsukasa said there was no need to do that. What mattered most now was winning the student council president election. Besides, the election committee was currently conducting a preliminary survey. Tsukasa was confident that Noriko would realize the gap between them soon enough. Tsukasa then reminded Junichi to work on the practice problems she had given him, which were all basic questions. She asked him to complete them immediately, and Junichi got right to it. After school, Junichi asked Tsukasa why she wanted to be the student council president in the first place. Tsukasa explained that it would look good on her record, which could help her get into a good university and secure a decent job in the future. The next day, the results of the initial election survey were posted on the school's announcement board. None of the students could believe the outcome. Noriko received 311 votes, Sei got 27 votes, Tsukasa received 72 votes, and Seiji had 108 votes. Tsukasa's friends couldn't believe she ranked third in this first survey. They were certain something was wrong. Tsukasa was far more well-known, and she played an important role on the committee for the school's anniversary celebration. They were convinced there must have been a mistake in the survey. Meanwhile, Noriko's friends were optimistic that Noriko would win easily, but Noriko remained humble, saying her campaign had only just begun. From a distance, Noriko watched Tsukasa, saying that their battle was only now about to start. Tsukasa returned her gaze sharply. During the break, Tsukasa was lost in thought by herself, so Junichi reminded her not to take the survey results too seriously. He pointed out that she still had time until the actual vote and just needed to turn things around before then. Tsukasa remained silent, prompting Junichi to ask if she was listening to him. Tsukasa apologized, explaining that she was deep in thought. She assured Junichi not to worry about her, as it was just a preliminary survey. She believed Noriko was using her father's influence to tamper with the results, possibly making people choose her through her father's power. Junichi was surprised Noriko would go that far. Tsukasa understood Noriko would try to defeat her no matter what, but she saw it as a temporary issue. Junichi asked if she was confident about winning. Tsukasa responded with a question, asking if he even knew who she was. Junichi smiled in relief. Just then, Yayoi arrived with friends carrying printed campaign flyers for Tsukasa. Tsukasa thanked them all, acknowledging that while her start might have been rough, she had no intention of losing and would need all their help and support. Tsukasa's friends were excited to help her distribute the flyers to students around the school. Maya and Ai too eagerly helped and supported Sai in her campaign. All the candidates and their friends were busy campaigning to win over student support. In the meantime, Junichi found himself staring as Tsukasa's skirt fluttered a bit in the breeze. This gave him an idea for a campaign poster. He even admitted that the inspiration struck when he saw Tsukasa's skirt blowing in the wind. Tsukasa was surprised that something like that could spark his imagination. Junichi explained that the current photos being used were only headshots. If Tsukasa had a captivating and memorable poster, it would definitely stand out. Tsukasa asked if he was sure, mentioning that someone had doodled on Seiji's poster. Junichi reassured her that no one would dare to mess with her poster. Tsukasa finally agreed and Junichi was thrilled to start. He began taking photos of Tsukasa, directing her poses from standing straight to tilting her body slightly and smiling at the camera. He felt like he was doing a magazine photo shoot, enjoying the process. Junichi then asked Tsukasa to sit down to add more variety, suggesting poses like lifting one knee, crossing her legs, and even removing her socks. Tsukasa looked at him with a less than pleased expression, causing Junichi to drop his camera in shock. The next day, the bulletin board displayed the results of the second survey for the Student Council President election. This time, Tsukasa placed second, while Noriko still held first. Tsukasa's friends were excited about the improvement, as she was now close to the top rank. They were convinced it was thanks to the new posters. Tsukasa, however, doubted that the posters alone were responsible and instead credited her friends' support, saying that she couldn't have made it this far without their help. With only a little time left before voting, she asked them to keep supporting her until the very end. Meanwhile, Junichi quietly asked Tsukasa why she thought she had gained so many votes. Tsukasa suspected that most of the votes Seiji had been gathering from the girls had likely shifted to her, mentioning that some girls had started avoiding him after he accidentally dropped a porn magazine in the school hallway. She made sure Junichi understood not to do anything foolish, as it could affect her vote count. Noriko, however, was annoyed by Tsukasa's rising popularity and together with her friends began plotting a way to secure her lead. Fearing that Tsukasa might overtake her, they decided to put their final plan into motion. One of Noriko's friends approached Junichi, telling him that Noriko wanted to speak with him. Junichi followed, led by Noriko's friend to meet her. Meanwhile, two of Noriko's other friends made sure to pass by Tsukasa and gossip about how Noriko planned to confess her feelings to Junichi behind the school. Hearing this, Tsukasa decided to head to the back of the school as well. Junichi walked over to where Noriko was waiting. She thanked him for coming, apologized for calling him over, and for listing his name as her potential vice president without discussing it first. Noriko added that this might be her last chance. Aware that Junichi was dating Tsukasa, she confessed she just couldn't give up on him. As Tsukasa made her way to the back of the school, two of Noriko's friends who were watching her from above gave a signal to another friend hiding behind a tree. This friend used a mirror to reflect light toward Noriko, letting her know Tsukasa was near. Seeing the flash, Noriko suddenly hugged Junichi, just as he was in the middle of his polite rejection. Noriko begged him not to say anything, holding onto him tightly enough that Junichi could feel her chest pressed against him. She insisted that he understand her feelings and moved her face closer to his, nearly pressing her lips to his, just as Tsukasa arrived and witnessed the whole scene in shock. Tsukasa saw Noriko hugging Junichi, and Junichi was shocked when he turned around and found Tsukasa standing behind him. Junichi immediately said that it wasn't what Tsukasa thought, and he quickly pulled Noriko's hands off his body. Tsukasa grabbed Junichi's tie and pulled him away. Noriko shouted that Junichi wasn't at fault, but Tsukasa looked at her angrily and left without a word. Noriko felt pleased, knowing she'd managed to make Tsukasa angry. Tsukasa took Junichi to a storage room. She got closer to him, making Junichi nervous as he thought Tsukasa was mad at him. But instead, Tsukasa pulled his tie and forcefully kissed him on the lips, then calmly straightened his tie. She asked if Junichi felt calmer now. Junichi replied that if Tsukasa kissed him once more, he'd feel even calmer. Tsukasa gave him a playful flick, telling him not to get carried away. Junichi apologized. Tsukasa explained that she wasn't mad because Junichi almost kissed Noriko, but because he'd fallen so easily into Noriko and her friend's trap. Junichi was surprised to hear this. Tsukasa went on to say that Noriko and her friends probably told Junichi that Noriko had something to say to him, and he just followed them without question. Then Noriko confessed her feelings to Junichi, and when he turned her down, she tried to hug and kiss him. Junichi asked if Tsukasa had seen it happen. She hadn't, but she knew their tricks well enough. Tsukasa was frustrated that Junichi hadn't noticed the trap. Junichi asked why they would set him up like that. Tsukasa explained that it was just like when Noriko wrote down Junichi's name as her candidate for vice president. This was just another way of trying to mess things up, only now it was more direct. Junichi realized that Noriko was doing all this to try to win the election for student council president. He hadn't thought she would go so far to win, but Tsukasa was sure that Noriko was determined to defeat her by any means necessary. The most important thing Tsukasa stressed was for Junichi not to fall into her traps again. Junichi nodded in understanding and promised to be careful. However, Tsukasa still didn't fully trust him, so she wanted him to swear. Tsukasa asked Junichi to promise not to kiss any other girl besides her. Junichi swore that he only loved Tsukasa and wouldn't kiss anyone else, adding that he'd be thrilled if she kissed him once more. But Tsukasa refused to give him another kiss, feeling that one kiss should be enough. The next morning, Junichi was still sleepy on his way to school when Ryoko Sakurai greeted him. Junichi commented on Ryoko's energy so early in the morning, and Ryoko asked if Junichi was feeling a bit worn out. Junichi said he wasn't, but Ryoko suddenly remembered that today was the campaign speech for the student council president election, and that Junichi was chosen as a candidate for vice president by both presidential candidates. Ryoko assumed Junichi had been up all night wondering who would win. No matter who won, Noriko or Tsukasa, Junichi would still end up as vice president. Ryoko then teased him, asking if he'd raise the tea club's budget if he became vice president. Junichi asked why the budget needed to be raised. Ryoko smiled and told him to think of it as the tea club's sudden stroke of luck. Junichi replied that it wouldn't happen, pointing out that it would be more important to focus on getting new members for the tea club. If no one joined next year, Ryoko would be the only one left in the club. Ryoko understood and admitted she was trying to figure that out too. Junichi then asked why she was so focused on increasing the budget. Ryoko reasoned that they would need extra funds to recruit members, suggesting they buy snacks for recruiting events, snacks for lunch breaks, and a stash of snacks just in case. Junichi was puzzled as to why everything seemed to revolve around snacks. Meanwhile, Yayoi and some other friends brought a sash for Tsukasa to wear during the campaign, decorated with messages of support from everyone in their class. This was actually Junichi's idea. Yayoi asked if Tsukasa liked the sash. Tsukasa was thrilled and thanked her friends, saying it would give her the strength she needed. The election committee announced that speeches from the student council president candidates would begin shortly and asked all first and second year students to gather in the gym. Haruka, a popular third-year student, once again mentioned that she should have run for the position. Her friend, tired of hearing this, reminded her of something. Haruka already knew what her friend would say, that she'd be graduating soon. Haruka seemed thrilled by the excitement of the election. Her friend understood that Haruka likely just wanted to join in on the fun and commented on what would happen if she ran and actually got elected. Haruka casually responded that she would just hand over the position to anyone who wanted it or could even come back from college to handle it. Meanwhile, two third-year members of the tea club were discussing that if they'd put Ryoko forward as a candidate and she won, it could really boost the club's budget, membership, and popularity. However, they agreed that Ryoko wasn't the right fit for a student council president. It wasn't something they could force, and besides, Ryoko was a beloved mascot of the tea club. Suddenly, over in the gym, Ryoko sneezed, a sign, as per Japanese tradition, that someone was talking about her. The first speech came from Sae, who began nervously. She introduced herself, but her speech was filled with stammers, and she nearly froze from embarrassment. Then Mia called out to cheer her on, and the whole room burst into laughter. Sae was grateful to Mia and continued her speech, eventually earning applause from everyone. Backstage, Junichi commented on the positive reactions Sae received. However, Tsukasa pointed out that a positive reaction alone didn't guarantee more votes. With Sae's speech over, it was now Tsukasa's turn. Just as Junichi reminded her, Tsukasa suddenly hugged him from behind. Junichi encouraged her, and Tsukasa began her speech with confidence, delivering it in a way that captivated the entire audience. After her, Noriko gave her speech, followed by Seiji. Finally, it was time for the voting, and afterward, everyone waited outside in the schoolyard for the final results. Sae was being cheered on by her two close friends, and Tsukasa's friends couldn't contain their excitement as they waited for the outcome. Junichi felt tense, but Tsukasa reassured him, saying there was no need to worry, and then held his hand, telling him that no matter the result, they'd worked hard together. Everyone's attention turned to the committee members arriving with the vote tally. They posted the results on the announcement board, and all the students eagerly gathered around. Tsukasa's friends were the first to congratulate her, as she had been elected as the student council president. They were thrilled and expressed their congratulations. Tsukasa thanked them, saying she couldn't have done it without their support. Yayoi mentioned that Tsukasa's hard work had paid off. Masayoshi also congratulated Junichi, who was now officially the vice president, commenting that it suited him as a recognized young man. Kaoru remarked that it was actually Tsukasa who had won and Junichi had only been chosen by her. But Masayoshi insisted that it was one of the reasons he admired Junichi. Kaoru then jokingly referred to Masayoshi as Junichi's minion, making everyone laugh. Junichi still couldn't believe that Tsukasa had won by such a wide margin. Tsukasa had already anticipated the result, saying that with a speech like hers, anyone would support her. Even Keiko had been so moved that she teared up during Tsukasa's speech. Masayoshi called it a legendary speech. Tsukasa thought her friends were praising her too much. Masayoshi assured her that with such a large margin, her leadership for the next year was secure. However, Tsukasa wasn't entirely convinced, saying she would work hard to ensure her position was secure, and Masayoshi believed that she absolutely would. Mia, Sei, and Ai went to a karaoke spot. Mia proposed a toast, but Ai pointed out that it didn't seem right since they lost the student council president election. Mia, however, argued that wasn't true. From the beginning, their goal in nominating Sei for the position was to help her overcome her shyness, and Sei had put in her best effort all the way through the election process. That alone, Mia said, was enough reason to celebrate. Ai agreed with Mia's point and they toasted. Mia then set out a new goal for Sei. She should aim to lead the school's anniversary planning committee, run for student council president again next year, and keep going as committee chair and president every following year. Sei was stunned while Ai laughed, saying that was a bit too much. Mia, unfazed, encouraged Sei to go all out with her support. She then cheered them up by suggesting they sing to their heart's content to lift their spirits. Meanwhile, Noriko's friends tried to comfort her, telling her not to dwell on the election results too much. They assured her that she'd just been a bit unlucky this time. Noriko laughed it off, saying that although she didn't win this time, she'd definitely succeed next time. She then dramatically shouted out the window that she'd use any means necessary to win Junichi over from Tsukasa. The students outside were startled by her bold declaration. The next day, Tsukasa and Junichi were heading home together. Junichi congratulated Tsukasa and she thanked him warmly. She could tell that he was exhausted, so she suggested they skip studying for the day as a reward. Junichi was pleased, though he teased her about the small reward. Tsukasa laughed, warning him that she'd make sure he worked extra hard the following day, and she would be even stricter than usual. Junichi protested, but Tsukasa firmly decided there would be no changes to her plan. Suddenly, a dog came running toward them. Startled, Junichi thought he should protect Tsukasa as both her boyfriend and her vice president. In an attempt to distract the dog, he tossed his bag to get its attention, which worked. The dog started chasing him instead. Tsukasa, bewildered, asked him what he was doing, but Junichi just kept running, calling back that he was leading the dog away and urging her to escape. Unfortunately, he didn't watch where he was going, slipped and fell into a river, while the dog simply ran off. Now soaked, Junichi found himself later warming up in Tsukasa's bathroom. On their way home, Tsukasa noticed how soaked he was and worried he might catch a cold. She invited him to her house to dry off. Junichi, a bit flustered, was taken aback by her invitation. Tsukasa noticed and asked if he didn't want to come over. Junichi clarified that it wasn't that he didn't want to, he just felt embarrassed. Tsukasa reassured him, saying her family wasn't home and suggested he take a bath while waiting for his clothes to dry. She even offered to scrub his back. Junichi thought she was joking, but she was entirely serious. Tsukasa started to undress, telling Junichi not to look. He obediently turned away, still unable to believe how serious she was. His mind wandered to a dream he'd had where Tsukasa had been scrubbing his back, wearing nothing but a towel. A moment later, Tsukasa came into the bathroom and Junichi quickly closed his eyes. She told him to open them and look at her. When he did, he was astonished. Tsukasa was standing there in a swimsuit, looking incredibly charming. Tsukasa asked if Junichi had any complaints about her. Junichi replied that she looked amazing. In response, Tsukasa playfully knocked him on the head and told him to get out of the bathtub so she could scrub his back. Junichi immediately complied, standing up, but unfortunately didn't realize he was completely naked. Tsukasa was shocked and let out a scream, then slapped him hard, leaving Junichi feeling the sting. She reminded him that it was his own fault for being careless. Junichi quickly apologized and Tsukasa began scrubbing his back. Junichi felt tense at first, but soon realized how enjoyable it was. It felt so much better than doing it himself. Tsukasa asked how it was, and he replied that it felt amazing. While she continued to scrub his back, Tsukasa thanked him, and Junichi asked if it was because of the student council election since she'd already thanked him quite a bit. Tsukasa clarified that it wasn't just for that, but also for helping her with the stray dog and the school festival. She acknowledged that Junichi had done so much for her. She also mentioned that she'd be thrilled if they could end up going to the same university. However, Tsukasa made it clear that she wouldn't sacrifice her chance at a good university just for him, which made Junichi laugh as he reassured her he understood. Tsukasa then leaned closer to him, making Junichi nervous, and reminded him of the promise they made to stay together forever. She also made him reaffirm the other promise, that he wouldn't kiss anyone else but her. Junichi agreed, and they shared a kiss. Afterward, Junichi jokingly asked if she'd be satisfied with just one kiss. Today was graduation day at Kibito High School, and Haruka had successfully completed her high school education. Sayamiya and Ai were now moving up to their second year, while Junichi's classmates were entering their final year as seniors. Today also marked the start of the annual budget committee meeting, with all the student council members and class representatives gathering in the council room. Junichi wanted to keep talking to Tsukasa, but they both had to head to the meeting. Tsukasa reassured him that they could chat as much as they wanted afterward. Junichi clarified that, more than anything, he just wanted to spend more time alone with her. But work was work, and so they headed to the meeting room together. The alarm clock in Rihoko's room kept ringing, but she kept hitting the snooze button and didn't get out of bed right away. Kanai wasn't surprised to see this and called out to Rihoko to get up. Rihoko shouted back, greeting Kanai, and then went right back to sleep. Kanai, annoyed, asked how long she planned on sleeping. Rihoko replied that she'd sleep as long as she wanted. After getting ready, Rihoko asked why her alarm didn't go off. Kanai said it rang loudly as usual, and that she thought Rihoko actually woke up for a moment. Kanai mentioned that this wasn't a good example for the president of the tea club. Rihoko laughed and said it was fine since Junichi was the vice president and he handled everything for her. Kanai didn't entirely agree with Rihoko on this. Rihoko added that Junichi was very reliable. Kanai felt that was just Rihoko's opinion, and she urged Rihoko to hurry up so they wouldn't be late for summer classes. It had been a few months since the upperclassmen graduated, and Junichi joined the tea club to keep Rihoko from being alone, but her feelings for him remained unreciprocated. Now summer classes were in session, and the teacher mentioned that the chapter they were studying would likely be on the exams, so she encouraged the students to study it well. Class ended, and they'd be covering modern history next time. Tsukasa asked the teacher a question and went up to the front of the class. Junichi complained to his friend about spending summer break only in class, but one of his friends wasn't going to let that happen. He was confident he'd get 2 or 3 girlfriends over the summer. Kanai invited Rihoko to hang out after school, but Rihoko apologized, explaining that she had to clean the tea club room with Junichi. Kanai offered to help, but it seemed like she thought better of interrupting Rihoko and Junichi's time alone. Rihoko didn't quite understand Kanai's meaning. Kanai leaned in and asked her quietly how things were going with Junichi. Rihoko didn't understand what Kanai meant by progress. Kanai asked if things were going smoothly between her and Junichi, leaving Rihoko unsure how to answer. Kanai got the hint that there had been no progress, saying that Rihoko was too slow, especially since they were already in the same club, so it was only a matter of time. From the outside, everything looked like it was going well. Kanai added that Junichi and Rihoko already seemed like a couple. Rihoko quickly denied Kanai's observation. Kanai commented that Junichi also wasn't very perceptive. Rihoko glanced over at Junichi, who was with Masayoshi. Junichi was returning a videotape to Masayoshi, who then asked how he liked the adult film. Junichi admitted he lost sleep over it, making Masayoshi laugh. Kanai suggested that the most important thing for Rihoko was to make a big firework this summer. Rihoko didn't understand Kanai's metaphor. Kanai explained that it was time for Junichi to find out about Rihoko's feelings. Junichi and Rihoko head to the tea club room to clean it up. Even though they cleaned it before summer break, it's already dusty again. Rihoko comments to Junichi that it's hard to believe the first term has already ended. She notes that at this rate, the second and third terms will pass quickly too, and soon they'll graduate. Curious, she asks Junichi what he plans to do after graduation, but Junichi's only response to all her questions has been, right. This makes Rihoko wonder if he's even paying attention to her. She approaches him and asks if he's okay. Junichi, lying down and looking weak, says he might have heat exhaustion. Ryoko starts fanning him and asks how he ended up like this. Junichi admits he stayed up all night, and when Ryoko asks why, he's a bit startled and says he was studying something. Ryoko assumes he must have been studying for exams. Junichi then asks Ryoko if she's feeling any heat exhaustion, and she tells him she's fine. Junichi jokes that since Ryoko eats and sleeps a lot, she's probably immune to it, though it wouldn't hurt if she had a little heat exhaustion. Confused, Ryoko asks why he would say that, and Junichi explains that if she did, she might lose her appetite. Ryoko didn't realize that could happen, and Junichi teases her by saying she looks a bit rounder now than in the spring. Shocked, Ryoko can't believe it. They head to the student infirmary, which seems empty. Ryoko mentions that wearing her school uniform might make her heavier than usual. Junichi brushes this off, thinking she's just making excuses. After all, he doesn't know her previous weight, so he suggests she go ahead and weigh herself. Ryoko asks him not to watch. She steps on the scale, shocked at the high number. When she turns around, she sees Junichi has one of his feet on the scale too, and she scolds him. After he steps away, she checks her weight again and quickly covers it, not wanting him to see. Junichi asks how much it's changed from before, and Ryoko insists her weight hasn't changed at all. Changing the subject, Ryoko asks if Junichi remembers when they were in 5th grade, just before summer break, and they measured each other like this. Back then, they went to the school infirmary and Junichi measured Ryoko's height. She was thrilled to find out she'd gotten taller. Then it was Junichi's turn and Ryoko measured him. But instead of focusing, Junichi started staring at Ryoko's chest. Excited, Ryoko cheered because this time she was taller than Junichi. Junichi couldn't believe it, but after checking the measuring tape, he accepted it. Not one to back down, Junichi suggested they compare other measurements and Ryoko agreed, asking what else they'd measure. Junichi suggested chest circumference and Ryoko was up for it. He measured her chest, smiling and taking his time with it, while Ryoko shouted for him to hurry up so they could take turns. She then measured Junichi's chest and cheered again when she won. Overjoyed, Ryoko jumped up and down, leaving Junichi frustrated at being defeated once more. Ryoko started feeling nostalgic about the old days when she and Junichi used to measure their height every year. Usually, Junichi would win. But that one time, Ryoko actually beat him. Junichi mentioned how he was even surprised by how much she had grown, which made Ryoko curious about what kind of size he was talking about. Taken aback, Junichi quickly clarified that he was only referring to her height. He then suggested they play the height measuring game again, just like in the past. Ryoko pointed out that Junichi was clearly taller than her now, but he playfully suggested they add chest measurements to the total height for a fairer comparison, which Ryoko agreed to. After measuring her height, Junichi asked Ryoko to raise her arms so he could measure her chest as well. He seemed a bit flustered, and Ryoko even called him out for taking too long with the measurement. Junichi apologized, and when Ryoko asked for the total, it turned out she still lost. Junichi concluded that both of them had grown significantly over the years. They then headed to the school garden, where Junichi lay down exhausted on a bench. Ryoko asked if his heat stroke was serious. Junichi admitted that it was quite bad, explaining that his eating schedule had also been thrown off since his parents left to visit his uncle, who was sick. Ryoko asked if this was the same get-rich-quick uncle of his, and Junichi confirmed it, adding that he'd been surviving on instant noodles and watermelon. Ryoko joked that if he kept that up, he'd turn into a rhinoceros beetle, and asked why he didn't just ask Mia to cook something for him. But Junichi declined, saying Mia's cooking was worse than the summer heat itself. At this, Ryoko offered to come over and make him dinner, which completely surprised Junichi. He was thrilled, eagerly asking her to come. Ryoko smiled and asked what he'd like to eat for dinner, to which Junichi replied he'd be happy with anything but instant noodles and watermelon. She encouraged him to think of a specific dish, and he mentioned he wanted something that could help with his heat exhaustion. Ryoko considered making something refreshing and nourishing, finally telling him she'd prepare something delicious for dinner. She said goodbye and promised to return at dinner time, heading off to buy ingredients. Junichi told her to be careful, jokingly warning her not to trip. And just then, she stumbled. Junichi smiled, watching her leave, glad to see her so lively. Ryoko, meanwhile, was already excited about what she'd cook later. When she got home, Ryoko immediately started picking out an outfit for her visit to Junichi's. She had 4 options and finally settled on a dress similar to what she'd worn when they used to play together years ago. Even with her undergarments, she couldn't decide, eventually choosing not to change them at all. After dressing, she grabbed her shopping list and headed out for ingredients. Walking with her list in hand, she planned to make soy-glazed eggplant and a chilled pork salad. She decided to go to the butcher's first. Suddenly, someone called her a lost lamb on her way to dinner and offered to guide her down the right path. Rihoko turned and recognized the voices. It was her upperclassmen, Yuzuki Ruriko and Heba Manaka, both former members of the tea club. She greeted them happily, and Ruriko commented on how healthy she looked. Rihoko asked what they were doing there, and they explained they were conducting scientific research. As students in the marine food department, they were spending their summer breaks studying the ecology of eel species. But Rihoko wasn't really listening. She was too distracted by the delicious smell around them. Mia was surprised when her brother told her that Rihoko was coming over to cook dinner. She was thrilled, relieved at the thought of finally not having to eat watermelon again. Though she claimed before that she could survive on just watermelon, which had been delivered to the house earlier, Mia admitted that while it was fun at first, she eventually got tired of it. Laughing, she said she was excited to have a proper dinner for a change and teased Junichi, blaming him for only knowing how to make fried rice. When they opened the fridge and found only watermelon, Junichi joked that they had practically become rhinoceros beetles. Mia asked her brother to go buy some ice cream and Junichi complied. Meanwhile, Rihoko shared with her upperclassmen that she was going to cook for Junichi, which was why she was out shopping for ingredients. She had already decided on what to make but thought eel might also be a good idea. She sampled some eel her seniors had prepared, finding it delicious. Ruriko then asked Rihoko if she had kissed her vice yet, catching her off guard and making her wonder why Ruriko would ask something like that. Based on Rihoko's reaction, Manaka guessed that it hadn't happened yet and that there hadn't been much progress between them. Rihoko admitted as much. After a moment of eye contact, her two seniors handed her a live eel, with Ruriko remarking that eating it would definitely revive Junichi. Ruriko and Manaka assured her she didn't need to be shy about it. When Rihoko tried to take the eel, its slippery surface made it hard for her to hold, and she ended up dropping it, so they gave her a grilled eel instead. Ruriko also suggested other ingredients that might help with sunstroke recovery, like lotus root. She explained that in Chinese characters, lotus root is written to represent training and stamina, symbolizing strength. She added that legendary kung fu masters were known to eat it often. Rihoko smiled, commenting that this felt familiar, just like back when they were all members of the tea club. Ruriko had once asked her if she knew the meaning behind the term "chowkscreen," to which Rihoko had no answer. Ruriko had explained that in ancient Hebrew, shuk meant love and lim meant good luck charm. Rihoko laughed, saying she wouldn't be tricked by Ruriko again, as she had grown up since then. Ruriko responded that she wouldn't pull those kinds of pranks anymore, as they were now university students and adult women. But Rihoko seemed a bit doubtful. Ruriko asked if Rihoko didn't trust her, and Rihoko apologized for being suspicious. Rihoko took notes on her seniors' cooking tips and thanked them. She then asked how they were finding college life and if they were having fun. Ruriko replied that it was pretty enjoyable, and Rihoko asked if they had joined the tea club again. They said no, they had joined the tennis club this time. Rihoko imagined them looking glamorous in tennis outfits, which Ruriko seemed to notice, teasing her that she knew exactly what Rihoko was imagining. Embarrassed, Rihoko blurted out, asking how they knew. Ruriko called her an innocent girl, while Manaka referred to her as a sweet kid. Ruriko also gave her some eel liver, and Manaka suggested that Rihoko make it into eel liver soup. Ruriko expressed hope that Junichi would enjoy Rihoko's cooking. As Rihoko was leaving, Ruriko prayed that the power of the eel would make Junichi strong that night, giving him unparalleled stamina, as Manaka put it. After finishing her shopping, Rihoko suddenly heard someone call her name, inviting her for tea. She turned to see it was her classmate Makabe, who was also surprised to see her. He seemed captivated by Rihoko's appearance and asked if she had been out shopping like him. Rihoko confirmed and explained she had been buying ingredients for dinner. She then said goodbye, but Makabe stopped her. While Junichi is at the supermarket buying ice cream, he suddenly spots Rihoko walking past the store's glass window. He quickly rushes outside, but Rihoko is already out of sight. Meanwhile, Makabe has taken Rihoko to a spot near the train tracks. Curious, Rihoko asks why Makabe brought her there. Makabe corners her against the fence and immediately begins complimenting her, saying how beautiful she looks in that outfit and how incredibly attractive she is. Rihoko is still unsure about what Makabe is trying to do. He goes on to say that seeing her like this stirs up intense feelings in him and wonders why he never noticed before. McCabe then confesses his love for Rihoko and asks her to go out with him. Taken aback by the sudden confession, Rihoko feels it's all happening too fast, but McCabe insists that love often comes unexpectedly and urges her to accept his feelings. However, Rihoko declines, explaining that she already has someone she likes. From a distance, Junichi catches sight of them. Intrigued, McCabe asks who it is that Rihoko loves. She begins to tell him the person's name, but unfortunately, Junichi can't hear it as her words are drowned out by the sound of a passing train. McCabe cornered Rihoko against the fence and immediately complimented her. He told Rihoko that she looked beautiful in that outfit and also very attractive. Rihoko still didn't understand what McCabe was up to. He added that seeing her now made him feel his passion rising, and for some reason he couldn't believe he hadn't noticed it until now. McCabe then confessed his love to Rihoko and asked her to date him. Rihoko felt it was too sudden, but McCabe insisted that love often comes unexpectedly and urged her to accept his feelings. However, Rihoko declined because she already had someone she liked. From a distance, Junichi watched the scene. Curious, McCabe asked who it was that Rihoko loved. She told him, but unfortunately, Junichi couldn't hear her because her voice was drowned out by the sound of a passing train. After hearing Rihoko say the name of the person she liked, McCabe let her go and told her not to regret rejecting him. Rihoko felt relieved and continued on her way to Junichi's house. Along the way, she remembered Kana's advice that it was time Junichi knew about her feelings. McCabe, meanwhile, continued trying to flirt with other girls who passed by, but unfortunately, this time he ended up hitting on his seniors. Realizing his mistake, he quickly apologized and fled, leaving the upperclassmen smiling at his antics. When Rihoko arrived at Junichi's house, she was warmly welcomed by Mia, who had been waiting for her. Mia eagerly asked if she'd seen Junichi on the way. Rihoko said she hadn't. Not long after, Junichi returned home, surprised to see Rihoko's shoes already at the door. Taking a deep breath to calm his nerves, he greeted everyone. Mia immediately went to her older brother, disappointed to find the ice cream he'd brought had melted. Junichi greeted Rihoko, who smiled and thanked him for letting her come over. Their awkwardness didn't go unnoticed by Mia, who asked what was going on between the two of them. Both Rihoko and Junichi said that there was nothing going on. Rihoko then offered to start cooking since Junichi and Mia were probably hungry. Mia volunteered to help, but Junichi stopped her, reminding her of the time she mixed up dashi with barley seasoning, which had made the miso soup taste strange. Rihoko just smiled at the sibling squabble. Mia shushed her brother, saying that everyone makes mistakes sometimes. While waiting for the food to be ready, Mia and Junichi watched TV together. Rihoko was busy cooking when Junichi approached her. Rihoko called out to him, and Junichi said he wanted to ask her something. He told her that when he was out buying ice cream, he'd noticed a lot of couples out and about this summer. Junichi then asked Rihoko what she thought about that. After thinking back to her own shopping trip, Rihoko said she didn't see that many couples. Junichi replied that maybe it was just a coincidence. Rihoko then asked if that was all they wanted to say. Junichi, flustered, said yes, that was all, and turned to go back to the TV room. However, Rihoko called him back, feeling nervous about saying something, but ultimately stopping herself and just telling him that she'd make something delicious for him. Junichi replied that he was looking forward to her cooking and returned to the TV room. Rihoko felt disappointed in herself for not confessing her feelings, quietly calling herself pathetic. Dinner was finally ready, and Rihoko had prepared an impressive spread. Mia and Junichi were both shocked to see it, with Mia calling Rihoko amazing and Junichi complimented her, saying the food looked delicious and asking if the ingredients were expensive. Rihoko just smiled, telling him that she'd gotten some of the ingredients from an upperclassman. Ruriko and Minaka were out fishing, chatting about how Rihoko was probably busy making a refreshing, energy-boosting meal with all her effort. Ruriko mentioned that they had tricked Rihoko again when she told her about another ingredient that supposedly treats heat stroke: lotus root. Lotus root is written in Chinese characters meaning training and steak, symbolizing fitness. It said that kung fu masters often eat it. Manaka commented that Rihoko is such a naive girl. Ruriko hoped it was time for Rihoko to confess her feelings to Junichi. Suddenly, something tugged on Ruriko's line. It moved fast, and the fish seemed huge. Manaka jumped in to help pull it up. After Rihoko talked about her upperclassmen, Junichi asked what their college life was like. Rihoko said they were doing well, enjoying life as students, and they even joined the tennis club. For a moment, Junichi imagined how attractive her upperclassmen must look in tennis outfits. Rihoko said they were very kind, teaching her many things and even showing her how to make the dinner recipe they were eating that night. Junichi smiled and continued enjoying his meal. Mia thanked Rihoko for making the dinner, and Junichi was so full he could barely move. Mia commented that Junichi's appetite had finally returned, and he replied that it was because the food was so delicious. Rihoko smiled with satisfaction, grateful she could cook for Junichi and Mia. Junichi thanked her, and Rihoko waved it off, saying that if they liked it, she can come over to cook dinner again. Mia was thrilled to hear this, and Junichi happily agreed. Just then, the phone rang. Mia asked Junichi to answer it because she was too full to move. Junichi refused, saying he was sure the call was for Mia anyway, and that she should pick it up. Mia argued back, and they decided to settle it by playing rock, paper, scissors. In the end, Mia had to answer. It turned out to be Sai, who apologized for calling so late and invited Mia to go to the amusement park with her the next day. Junichi overheard Mia's conversation and felt proud for correctly guessing that the call was for her. Rihoko was cleaning up the dishes, and when Junichi offered to help, Rihoko told him it was fine. She called Junichi's name, wanting to say something, but Mia suddenly yelled loudly from her call. Mia ran over to Junichi and Rihoko, announcing that she'd be going to the amusement park with Sai and Ai tomorrow. Overjoyed, Mia suddenly declared that it was time for dessert. Junichi called her out on it, pointing out that she had just said she was full. Mia replied that there's always extra room for dessert and asked Rihoko if she wanted some too. Rihoko nodded, smiling. Junichi laughed, commenting on how Mia's appetite was truly incredible. Rihoko smiled at this. Mia prepared shaved ice for dessert, and for herself, she made an enormous portion. Junichi warned her that her stomach might hurt if she ate it all, but she simply poured syrup over the ice. Ideally, it would have been time for ice cream, but unfortunately, the ice cream had melted. Junichi apologized for that. Mia then proudly displayed her 7-flavor shaved ice creation, offering some to Rihoko, who just smiled back. Heavy rain began to pour outside, so Mia suggested that Rihoko spend the night at their house. Rihoko initially declined, but Mia worried that she'd catch a cold if she walked home in such heavy rain. Mia asked her brother what he thought, and Junichi agreed it would be best if Rihoko didn't mind. In the end, Rihoko decided to stay over and gave Junichi a grateful smile. Rihoko was soaking in the bath, thinking in disbelief about how she was staying at Junichi's house tonight. So much had happened in one day. Meanwhile, Junichi was looking through his small photo album, filled with pictures of him and Rihoko from when they were kids, all the way through grade school to high school, each photo perfectly organized. There was even a picture of the two of them in the tea club room. Rihoko tried to build up her confidence, telling herself that she would confess her feelings tonight. Junichi heard Rihoko finish her bath, and Mia offered her a futon. Rihoko apologized to Mia for the trouble, but Mia was thrilled, saying she was excited to sleep next to Rihoko. Mia even joked about using Rihoko's soft chest as a pillow. Junichi knocked on Mia's door, asking if Rihoko's clothes fit her. He was stunned when he saw Rihoko, and without thinking, muttered soft while looking at her chest. Rihoko was confused and asked what he meant. Junichi quickly covered up, saying he didn't mean anything by it, and then asked if the clothes fit her. Rihoko replied that they fit just fine and thanked him. Mia commented that Rihoko looked squeezed into Mia's clothes, but luckily Junichi's clothes fit her comfortably. Mia then quickly shooed her brother out of the room and shut the door. In the middle of the night, Rihoko noticed Mia sleepwalking out of the room, leaving her a bit puzzled. Mia ended up in Junichi's room, startling him as she walked in. He was even more surprised when she began to pull down her pants. Junichi leaped out of bed and gently shook Mia awake. Mia opened her eyes, mumbling bathroom, and Junichi sighed, saying she must have eaten too much shaved ice. Afterward, Mia returned to her room to continue sleeping. However, Mia's loud snoring kept Rihoko awake. She got up and walked to Junichi's room, knocking on his door only to find he wasn't there. Rihoko went out to the porch, where she found Junichi sitting and gazing into the yard. He turned around, noticing her behind him, and asked why she'd come out. Rihoko said she couldn't sleep, and it turned out that Junichi couldn't either. They sat together on the porch, looking out into the yard. The rain had finally stopped, and just as Rihoko began to say something to Junichi, he invited her to play with sparklers together. Rihoko agreed. Junichi reminisced about their childhood, recalling how they played with sparklers almost every day during summer break. If you remembered right, the fireworks they used to play with had little parachutes. Rihoko laughed, saying he used to get so excited trying to catch the parachutes that floated down after the fireworks exploded. Junichi remembered how much Rihoko loved the sparkling fireworks. She told him the sparkling lights of the fireworks were so beautiful. They'd even had competitions to see whose firework would last the longest, and when Junichi's went out first, Rihoko would give him hers, only for it to go out soon after. They recreated those childhood memories by lighting sparklers together. Rihoko mentioned how their last summer break in high school was almost over, and it felt like it had flown by, like it was just yesterday. They attended the opening ceremony as new students. Rihoko asked if Junichi had decided on what he wanted to do after graduation. Junichi returned the question, and she admitted she was still undecided. He remarked that it was time for them both to figure it out soon. Junichi said that ever since kindergarten, they had always been together, no matter where they went. Rihoko was about to say something to Junichi, but held back out of nervousness. Suddenly, she was startled when Junichi mentioned how nice it would be if things could stay just like this. Rihoko tried to speak up, but again hesitated. Right as Junichi accidentally stepped on a firework, causing him to fall forward, nearly landing on Rihoko. They found themselves face to face, locking eyes. Both quickly apologized, turned away in embarrassment, and sat in silence for a moment before simultaneously calling each other's name. Junichi then confessed that he liked her. He admitted that he hadn't realized how close they'd gotten, but he knew he had always liked her and was certain of his feelings. Rihoko smiled, saying she felt the same, that she liked him too and always wanted to be together. With that, the two shared a kiss. The next morning, Junichi and Rihoko were having tea together. Junichi praised the green tea, saying it was delicious, probably because Rihoko had made it. Rihoko smiled and said it was likely because she'd made it for someone she liked very much. Just then, Mia walked out to join them and greeted them cheerfully. In an instant, Rihoko and Junichi moved a little farther apart. Mia noticed and asked why they both looked so red. Junichi nervously suggested it might be because the tea was hot, while Rihoko offered that maybe it was because of the warm weather. Mia stared at her brother, inching closer, and commented that something seemed strange about him. Junichi raised his voice, insisting there was nothing strange about him. Mia, puzzled, asked why he seemed so upset, still doubtful of his answer. Rihoko simply smiled, watching the sibling banner play out in front of her. Junichi and Ai went to the beach together, and Junichi mentioned that he felt really cold. Of course, it was freezing since they went to the beach during winter. It was Junichi's idea to come here in the first place. He worried they might catch a cold if they stayed like this, so he suggested warming up. Ai didn't quite understand what he meant until Junichi suddenly squeezed himself into her jacket and hugged her. He said Ai's body felt so warm, and Ai asked if this was the real reason he wanted to come here. Junichi admitted that for today it was. After all, they rarely saw each other at school lately. Recently, Junichi had been busy attending prep sessions for university entrance exams, while Ai had her hands full with swim club activities and household chores. Junichi mentioned how much he was looking forward to their Christmas date, and Ai agreed. It had been almost a year since their last Christmas, and the season was just around the corner again. Last year was so much fun. Unfortunately, when they visited the hot springs last time, they couldn't climb the hill because the deer population was rapidly growing. Just as Ai was about to ask about their plans for this year's date, she realized Junichi had fallen asleep on her shoulder. In his sleep, he murmured something about definitely getting into university and becoming a man worthy of her. Ai smiled at the sight of him mumbling in his sleep and called him a hopeless upperclassman. The next day, Ai went to Junichi's house. Mia opened the door and greeted her cheerfully. Ai greeted her back and asked where Junichi was. Mia explained that he was still asleep, likely because he had been up late studying. Ai then headed straight to Junichi's room to wake him up. Mia thanked her for doing this almost every day and mentioned how lucky Junichi was to have a girlfriend like Ai. When she entered Junichi's room, Ai immediately opened the curtains and tried to wake him up. However, Junichi complained about still being sleepy. Ai warned him that he had just enough time to get ready or risk skipping school for the day. Junichi jokingly suggested that skipping wasn't such a bad idea. Ai countered by threatening to pull him out of bed if he didn't wake up. But instead, Junichi pulled her under the blanket and hugged her. Later, Ai and Junichi walked to school together. On the way, Junichi kept yawning, prompting Ai to ask if he had indeed been up late studying as Mia had mentioned. Junichi admitted he got carried away because he was feeling so motivated to work on practice exams. Ai praised his hard work but gently reminded him not to overdo it. Junichi thanked her for the advice. When they reached school, Ai's friends greeted her, teasing her about how lovey-dovey she and Junichi seemed every morning. Ai blushed in embarrassment. In class, Masayoshi was pleading with Junichi about something. Confused, Junichi asked him what was going on. Masayoshi explained that if things continued like this, his 3 years of high school would feel meaningless. He desperately wanted to have a girlfriend before Christmas. Masayoshi insisted that Junichi must know someone, maybe through his sister or Ai, and begged to be introduced to a girl. Although Junichi couldn't guarantee anything, Masayoshi kept pleading, saying Junichi was his only hope. As Masayoshi continued to tug at Junichi in desperation, they ended up falling to the floor, landing awkwardly on top of each other. Masayoshi kept pleading with Junichi, who tried to push him off. This bizarre scene was witnessed by Kiko and Kaoru, who were left utterly confused about what Masayoshi and Junichi were doing. During the lunch break, most students headed to the cafeteria to relax, but Junichi chose to spend his time in the library. There, Tsukasa approached him and asked if he was studying. Junichi explained that his prep class was on break that day, so he decided to change the scenery a bit. He then asked if Tsukasa was also studying and mentioned that she had already received an offer from a university. Tsukasa replied that studying had become a habit for her, and she felt uncomfortable if she wasn't doing it. Junichi admired her dedication, admitting he wished studying would become a habit for him too. Tsukasa simply smiled, unsure of how to respond, and left. Feeling it was time to head home, Junichi suddenly remembered something and decided to visit the swimming pool. The place was bustling with activity, as several new members had recently joined. Junichi became engrossed in watching the swim club members, almost forgetting why he came there in the first place. Among them, he noticed Ai teaching the new members how to swim. Watching her take charge as captain reminded him of their senior, Sukahara Hibiki, from the previous year. Junichi waved at Ai, but she returned his gesture with a sharp glare. Junichi was scolded by Ai, who reminded him that boys weren't allowed in the pool area while the girls' swim club was practicing. Had he forgotten the rules? Junichi admitted he hadn't forgotten. He just wanted to see Ai. However, he apologized for breaking the rules. The swim club members, noticing the exchange, teased Ai, suggesting she go easy on Junichi since everyone knew she often looked toward the entrance around this time. Embarrassed, Ai realized Junichi now knew she had been eagerly awaiting him. Ai asked Junichi if he regretted what he had done and warned him not to come back during club activities. Junichi sincerely apologized and promised not to repeat his mistake. Ai forgave him and ended his punishment, but suddenly Mia showed up, urging Ai not to let him off so easily. Junichi, surprised to see Mia there, asked what she was doing at the pool. Mia revealed she had joined the swim club this year. Junichi was shocked to learn this, as Mia had kept it a secret. She explained that it was more fun to surprise him this way. When Junichi asked Ai if she had known, Ai admitted that Mia had asked her to keep it a secret from him. Mia insisted Ai punished Junichi further, accusing him of ogling not just Ai, but also the other girls while grinning. Ai, startled, turned to Junichi, who quickly denied grinning at anyone. Mia called her brother a liar, pointing out how pervy his face had looked earlier. Junichi, flustered, covered his face in embarrassment. Mia laughed, thoroughly amused by her brother's awkwardness. Ai then called out to Junichi, and she and the other girls approached him with angry expressions. Panicking, Junichi tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding, but it was too late. Their frustration boiled over, and they ganged up on him. On their way home, Ai was visibly upset with Junichi, feeling that his behavior had gone too far. However, Junichi kept insisting that he only went to the pool to see her. Since he had no prep class that day, he thought it would be nice to walk home together after so long. Ai eventually softened and forgave him, but on one condition. As punishment, Junichi had to accompany her grocery shopping. Ai mentioned there was a big sale today, with a maximum of 2 cartons of eggs and 1 bottle of milk per person at the nearby supermarket. Junichi gladly accepted his punishment, but Ai warned him that she wouldn't forgive him again if he ever peeked at the girls in the pool. Later that day, Junichi was resting in the school infirmary. During lunch break, Ai went to check on him. She gently covered him with a blanket, but the movement woke him up. Ai apologized for disturbing him. Junichi thanked her for tucking him in and tried to sit up, but Ai stopped him, insisting he should stay lying down. Curious, Junichi asked why Ai had come to see him. She explained she had been looking for him to eat lunch together, but now she understood since Mia told her he'd been up all night studying. Hearing Mia's name, Junichi remembered something. He shared a childhood memory of how Mia loved falling asleep on their dad's stomach. Ai laughed, recalling her little brother Ikuo, who would quickly fall asleep when she sang him lullabies, though he never slept on her stomach. Junichi then jokingly suggested he might fall asleep better if Ai let him rest on her stomach while she sang him a lullaby. Ai, flustered, asked if he really expected her to do that. Junichi casually replied that it wouldn't bother him if it didn't bother her. Ai naturally refused, saying it would be way too embarrassing if someone walked in. Junichi countered that it wouldn't be an issue if they closed the curtain around the bed, confidently claiming it would relieve all his study-induced fatigue. Ai hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing, sighing as she closed the curtain. She asked how to go about it, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. After Junichi lay his head on her lap, Ai covered his eyes, muttering how embarrassing it felt. Junichi shifted slightly, but Ai scolded him to stay still. Finally, Ai began singing a lullaby she used to sing to her younger brother. To her surprise, it worked. Junichi quickly drifted off into a peaceful sleep. That evening, Ai reminded her brother Ikuo to prepare his school books and go to bed. However, she found him already fast asleep under the kotatsu. She woke him gently, urging him to move to his bed. Once Ikuo went to his room, Ai began thinking about where she and Junichi should go for their Christmas Eve date. The next day, Junichi approached Ai looking troubled. He apologized, saying that his prep class results from last week had just come in, and he was struggling to figure out how to tell her. Ai asked if his results were bad, and Junichi nodded. When she asked just how bad, Junichi sheepishly admitted that if she looked at the rankings from the bottom up, she'd find his name quickly. Ai was shocked. Junichi explained he had answered correctly, but had written his answers in the wrong rows. Ai sighed, saying she understood if it was just a mistake. However, Junichi was still embarrassed. Ai reassured him, saying there was no need to apologize since he could just do better next time. Junichi clarified that his apology wasn't for that. He explained that because of his poor results, he was now required to attend a strict training camp for low scorers, starting on December 23. Ai was taken aback. Junichi continued, explaining that he had tried to negotiate with his prep teacher, arguing that his answers were correct aside from the misplaced rows. However, the teacher refused to make exceptions, stating that such errors wouldn't be forgiven in the actual entrance exams. Worse, Junichi revealed that rumors about the training camp described it as harsh. The head instructor was said to be incredibly strict, and attendees would be quarantined for the entire duration of the camp. They would be woken up at 5 a.m. every day and required to study relentlessly until bedtime. Ai couldn't hide her dismay at hearing this. After hearing Junichi's explanation, Ai mentioned that she also needed to attend the women's swim club after party following the school anniversary celebration. She was a little worried that this might cut into their date time. As the captain of the swim club, Ai had to be there, so she pointed out that it was just a coincidence they both had events happening at the same time. Ai asked Junichi not to worry too much about it. Junichi promised to make it up to her, and Ai said she'd look forward to it. Before leaving, she encouraged Junichi to do his best at the training camp. Sei announced to her classmates that their class had decided to perform a play for the school anniversary celebration. She asked them to start assigning roles and supporting staff and encourage everyone to share their thoughts. Meanwhile, Ai was lost in her thoughts, regretting what she had told Junichi earlier. The morning practices for next year's club meetings wouldn't start until next week, but with the school anniversary preparations underway, their time together was going to be even more limited. Mia, noticing Ai's distraction, asked what role Ai wanted to play in the drama. Although Mia knew Ai was already busy running the Odin stall, she suggested Ai try participating in the play too. It might be a chance for her to enjoy both. Unfortunately, Ai wasn't paying attention to Mia's words. All the students were busy with preparations for the school festival, and Ai was no exception. Junichi, on the other hand, was preoccupied with his prep classes, leaving them with no time to meet. Ai's constant worrying began to concern Sai and Mia. Meanwhile, Junichi often fell asleep in class from staying up late studying and even got scolded by his teachers. Ai couldn't stop thinking about him, and after school, Junichi spotted a coat on display in a store and found himself drawn to it. The day of the school anniversary celebration arrived, and Ai's classmates busied themselves preparing for the play. Ai, however, still couldn't shake her thoughts about Junichi. She wandered into the infirmary to reminisce about the time they had spent there together. With the training camp just around the corner, Ai decided to make a blanket for Junichi, hoping he could use it during the camp. It felt early, but she thought a Christmas gift like this might show him how much she supported him. Elsewhere, Kiko was chatting with Kaoru about good places for a Christmas date. Kaoru suggested Port Tower, a popular spot, and mentioned other options like amusement parks, movie theaters, and karaoke places. Kiko wondered if any Christmas-themed movies would be playing in theaters. This reminded Kaoru of a special aquarium show held exclusively on Christmas Day. Kiko imagined spending Christmas Eve with someone she loved at a magical aquarium, thinking it would be incredibly romantic. Kaoru agreed, saying an atmosphere like that would make any guy swoon. Just imagining it made Kiko's heart race. Unbeknownst to them, Ai overheard their conversation. Kaoru then laughed, realizing it was pointless for her and Keiko to discuss Christmas date spots since neither of them had a boyfriend. Ai was reminded of what Mia had told her earlier, that Junichi had been taken to the training camp by his prep school last night. Mia explained that the camp hadn't officially started yet, but students with especially low scores had to begin earlier to study longer. According to Mia, people from the prep school had suddenly arrived at their home and taken Junichi away. Before leaving, Junichi asked Mia to let Ai know. When Christmas Eve arrived, couples everywhere spent the evening together, celebrating the holiday with their loved ones, except for Ai. She celebrated alone, thinking about Junichi, who was likely studying hard at the camp. She tried to understand his situation, knowing how important it was for him. As she walked home, her mind was filled with memories of the moments they had shared together.